Hello everybody, it is Jess and welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for being here today. Today I am going to be discussing some of the books that I have read so far in April. So I have 3 physical books here and then I have 2 other books that I loaned out from the library that I'm going to be talking about. I decided this month to just split my wrap up in 2 and do a mid-month wrap up because I just feel like it would be easier for me to sit down and film it that way. I always kind of procrastinate when it comes to doing my end of the month wrap ups just because sometimes I have so many books to talk about and it can take quite a while, and also I don't want to make these videos too long for you guys. I know some of you like watching long videos, I know I do, and that's great, but for those of you who don't, I thought this would be a perfect way to do that. And also I think it would just give me a bit more of a chance to focus on each book a little bit more. So we're going to see how this goes. But yeah, as I mentioned, I've read 5 books so far in April and all of them have been pretty good so far. I have only had 1 3-star book so far this month. So as always, I'm going to start with the lowest rated books and then finish on the highest rated books. So let's start with my lowest rated book and the 3-star book. So The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. So this is the first book in Becky Chambers' Wayfarer series. This is a young adult sci-fi, and we are following Rosemary, who is a young human woman, and she joins the crew of the Wayfarer. She's applied for this position as a clerk, and she ends up working on the Wayfarer as their clerk, and they are given this mission to tunnel this hole through the universe essentially, and they get sent on a lot of adventures along the way. I had a lot of expectations for this going into it because I have heard so many amazing things about this series, but it just wasn't for me, unfortunately. And I'll tell you why, because this is very character driven sci-fi. Not that I am not a fan of character driven stories, I love character driven stories, but when it comes to sci-fi in particular, I am there for the plot, I am there for the tension, the atmosphere, the excitement, the sci-fi jargon, and this book does have some of that, but because it's, you know, very light sci-fi and for a very different target audience, it just didn't work for me. And I think the lack of plot is what let this book down a little bit. As I said, it's very character driven, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. The best thing about this book is the cast of characters that we have. We have a very diverse range of characters from all corners of the universe. Seeing their interactions with each other and getting to know them, their histories and their cultures and things like that was really great, and I really enjoyed it. But I just would have liked more of the plot. I didn't feel excited. I didn't feel that tension that you get with, you know, big sci-fi adventures. It just wasn't for me. But as I said, the cast of characters are wonderful, definitely the strongest point about this book, and I love how diverse they all are. I love that the aliens in this aren't your typical like humanoid looking aliens that we see so often in sci-fi. There are aliens that look like lizards and aliens that look like dogs and aliens that look like big mole octopus things, you know. They all just look really weird, and that's how aliens should be. So I really, really loved that aspect to it, and I loved the inclusivity I really struggle with that word, of this book. You know, there was queer characters and disabled characters, and characters with very different backgrounds and cultures, religions, and it just made for a very rich and interesting universe. You know, I do think the world building in this is really well done. So this book had a lot of things going for it, but there just wasn't enough plot for me to be interested enough. And yeah, it wasn't for me. But I think, you know, if you are looking for a light sci-fi, a feel-good sci-fi, or if you're new to sci-fi and you want somewhere to start, I think this would be a really good jumping on point, because, you know, it's not too heavy on the jargon, it's not massive, you know, and all the characters are really likable, and it's fun. Essentially, this book was fun, so I am still interested in continuing the series. I did actually end up finishing this on audiobook just because I was reading this when I had COVID, and it was hard for me to physically read it sometimes. So I did end up finishing the last like half of it on audio, and I did enjoy the audio book. The narrator was really fun. So yeah, I think I'm going to carry on with this series, and I'll get the second book on audio because I think that's the way to go with this for me. I'm not sure, but yeah, I still enjoyed it and I would still recommend it. So that was my only 3-star read of the month. The next 3 books I'm going to talk about are all 4 stars. So first off, we have The Vegetarian by Han Kang. So Han Kang is a South Korean author, and this is a novella that is very weird, and I'm not sure how I'm going to talk about this without giving too much of the plot away. But essentially, we are following perspectives of 3 characters who know this young woman called Young Hai. So Young Hai has made this decision to become vegetarian, and she attests it to the fact that she's had this dream. We don't know what this dream is, what it's about, what it's told her, but one night she had this dream and her husband finds her in the kitchen throwing away all of the meat, and she says that she has decided to become vegetarian because of this dream. So we are following the perspective of her husband, who is witnessing her decision and the things that her decision has caused her to do, like throwing away all of the meat and refusing to eat it, and how that has affected him and the family, because they don't see this as normal and they think something is wrong with her, and they are trying to persuade Young Hai to eat meat and stop being stupid, essentially. And then we are also following the perspective of Young Hai's sister and her sister's husband in the last 2 parts. As I said, this book was weird. Yes, this book is about a vegetarian, but it's also about a lot of other things. It has a lot of underlying layers. It is about love and friendship and the body and sex and nature and family. Did I say family? I probably did. But there is a lot of things going on, and yes, it was weird, but I also found it very poignant and very heartbreaking at times. There are some very harrowing scenes in this book. It is quite a heavy read, and I did feel quite exhausted after reading it. I read this in less than a couple of hours, actually. And yeah, it did take a lot out of me. But the way that I see it is that the vegetarian kind of stands for a metaphor of being different And this book kind of highlights how people are treated when they make a decision that's not considered the norm. So in this case, Young Hai chose to become a vegetarian and to, you know, denounce eating meat. Within a meat-eating society, that was considered strange, and so she was treated very differently because of it, and people refused to respect her. They treated her appallingly, actually. And I think, you know, that kind of applies to other things, you know, whether your sexuality is different, or your race is different, or your gender identity is different, or your religion. You know, a lot of people are experiencing this kind of mistreatment and this disrespect because of the things that they decide to do, or because of the way they are, or because of who they love. And I just kind of took from this book that it's saying, you know, you don't have to stand for the way you are being treated, and you have every right to your freedom and your bodily autonomy, and no one should be able to take that away from you. I really, really like this book. I know it's not going to be for everyone, and I did have some issues with it, but overall, it was a really interesting, weird little read, and I'm very impressed, and I can't wait to read some more stuff by Han Kang. So my next 4-star read is A Storm of Swords, Part 1, Steel and Snow by George R.R. Martin. So this is the first part of the third book in the A Song of Ice and Fire series, and this was a wild time, just like the previous 2 books. This is where stuff gets really interesting for me, and a lot of my favourite characters have a lot of things going on that really excite me. But it's also a book that makes me very angry. And yeah, I had a lot of fun reading this. It's, you know, typical Game of Thrones, typical grimdark, you know, lots of murder, backstabbing, betrayal, just lots of not very nice things, but with, you know, a fantasy element to it. You know, we've got dragons, we've got wolves, we've got White Walkers. I really, really enjoyed this, and it's just not a full 5 stars for me because, you know, George R.R. Martin does go on sometimes, and it's not that everything he writes isn't important, but he does tend to repeat some things. But I understand why he does that, you know. But I don't really have many criticisms on this. I really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to getting into part 2, which would be next month, hopefully. We'll see. And then 4.5 stars, we have The Waiter by A.J. Chowdhury. So this is another book that I loaned from the library. I'd never heard of this book until I saw it at the library, but I've seen a few other people reading it recently. It's really weird how I'd never seen or heard of this book until I started reading it, and then all of a sudden it's popping up everywhere. But this is a thriller set in 2 timelines. So we are following this character called Camille. Now, Camille used to be a detective in Kolkata, India, but because of reasons, he lost his job in Kolkata, and he ended up moving to London on a temporary visa, and he is working illegally as a waiter in a little Indian restaurant in Camden Town, and one of the events that he is catering for, he's catering at his boss's rich friend's birthday party, this guy called Rakesh. It's all going well, you know, everything's, you know, great, people are having a good time, and then at the end of this party, Rakesh, this rich guy, is found dead near his swimming pool, and Camille takes it upon himself to investigate this death because he thinks it's murder. And we are also, so we're following that timeline in London, but then we are also following this other timeline of this other case that he was on in Calcutta, when this Bollywood star was found dead in his hotel room. And the two timelines kind of merged together, and I had so much fun with this and trying to piece together what was happening. I think AJ Chowdhury did a really good job of putting the clues right in front of you, but making them so that you miss them, if you know what I mean. When I think back to this book, there were so many things that were so obvious, but I just kind of disregarded it, and I feel so stupid. Yeah, I really enjoyed this. My favorite thing about this book was just the descriptions of Camden Town, you know, this vibrant area of London and the Asian community within it. You know, it was just so colourful, and I could just picture myself there. And I think when writers can do that, they're just, you know, it is just phenomenal. It just makes the book just so much more enjoyable. But also Chowdhury's descriptions of the Indian food in this story were just spot on. You know, they were making me crave Indian food so much. They were making my mouth water. All of the characters I thought were really likable, and they all had really good strong points. I especially liked Anjali. Anjali is Camille's flatmate, and she helps him with his investigation, and she definitely comes across as someone that I would like to be friends with. She's very quirky, very fun, very strong-willed, and I love her a lot. Yeah, there's just so many things about this book that I loved, and I thought it was a really unique thriller. I thought it was well written. My only gripe with it was that I didn't enjoy the end of it that much, but I am kind of interested to see how the end of The Waiter is going to affect the characters and what happens in the next book, which is called The Cook, and I think it's coming out very soon. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm really looking forward to it. I was really impressed by this one, so go and read it if you haven't. I promise you won't be disappointed. All right, so we're on to the last book, and it is a 5-star read. Women Don't Owe You Pretty by Florence Given. So this is the exclusive edition by, I think it was by Waterstones, that's where I got it from, but this is the small edition, so this is the same content as the original publication. It just doesn't have any of the artwork in the book, but I flew through this one. This one was a really insightful and captivating read, and it wasn't like it was stuff that I didn't know before, but it definitely made me think about some things in a different way, and it definitely made me question what my beliefs are about being a woman, what it means to be a woman, what even is a woman, because I don't think you can just define it by, you know, one or two things. I was really drawn to this, and I think mainly because of Florence Given's voice. You can see her personality within the writing, which I always love it when writers do that, when they allow themselves to bleed into the words, because it just makes it so much more personal and so much more easy to digest. Very conversational form of writing, which I really enjoy, and it definitely allowed me to take it all in a lot quicker. I really like how accessible this book is, you know, and I definitely think a lot of younger women should read this. I would have loved to have had something like this when I was younger. It talks a lot about boundaries, you know, being able to set your own boundaries and being able to say no and not feeling guilty for saying no. And also talks a lot about your bodily autonomy and how, you know, you have a right to dress how you want, to act how you want. And yeah, a lot of it just really resonated with me, as it will for a lot of women, if all women. And it also made some points as well about a lot of other things that you could apply stuff to in life, whether that be race or sexuality or religion. You know, I just thought it was a really interesting book to read. I highly recommend it. I don't know what else to say, but yeah, cute little book as well. Really, really like this. Those are the books that I have read so far in April. Let me know in the comments down below if you've read any of the books that I've talked about in this video and what you thought of them, whether you agree with me or not, because as always, I love to hear what you guys have to say. I am going to wrap this video up here. You can also let me know if you like the idea of me continuing to do a mid-month wrap up and then an end of the month wrap up, and splitting it up that way might be a bit easier for me to film and for people to watch. So let me know your thoughts on that. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. You can leave a cheeky thumbs up if you like this video. You can subscribe to my channel as well. I always appreciate it. And don't forget, you can hit the bell button so you will be notified every single time I do upload. And having said all of that, I will see you all in my next video very soon. Bye guys.